Okay, well, let's have an opening prayer. Dear Lord, thank you. Thank you for today and all the wonderful blessings that are part of our day. All of the aspects that we take for granted and don't think about that make everything come about. Thank you for giving us time to study these wise words in order to understand better how our thinking is going to affect our lives as we go forward. And in the name of Jesus, amen. Tonight, again continuing in the book The Nature of Personal Reality, and I guess we're still in chapter 8, and then we're up, I'm sorry, we're up to chapter 9, which the title is Natural Grace, the Framework of Creativity, and the Health of Your Body and Mind. And then a sentence that says the Birth of Conscience. And we will begin with session 638, which in this edition starts on the bottom of 161. And very quickly, I'm going to review the statements of the last two sessions. Okay, and that's the whole reason that we do those statements, is to trigger the memories. So 2 sessions ago on August 8th, the statement was, I am always in a state of grace. And then the last session last week on August 15th, 2012 was, I direct inexhaustible energy. And then today, starting session 638, we will first have a little cat night. And then after that we will begin reading. I will. You guys ready?
Yes.
Alright. I'll skip the italics down to now. Good evening. It says give us a moment for dictation. And it goes on. I can see that my analogy comparing the soul to an organ within a multidimensional psychic structure of the entity is confusing you. We will clear it up by comparing the same properties, changing the word soul to read oversoul. As earlier mentioned, and simply following the analogy, each self has its own soul within the oversoul. And the oversoul is itself a part of the entity's multi-dimensional structure. The earlier statement makes perfect sense to me, for each self would call that portion of its greater reality within the whole unit its own soul. Now, does that explanation clear up the matter for you? And Jane's husband said, yes, I think so. If it does for you, then it also will for the reader. And then there's more italics, and it goes on over here. It says, all of this material, I understand, is complicated. It is also difficult to explain. It becomes highly pertinent, however, in many instances of your lives and affects your daily being and experience. I gave the information in this chapter purposefully when I did, knowing that our visitor from the psychiatric clinic would be here. I want to discuss the state of grace in some detail and in different ways throughout this book. The young man who came here described in some detail the way in which LSD is used in therapy work with patients. The psychologists hoped to bring about a cure for various emotional difficulties, to literally introduce a, quote, state of grace, unquote. The material that I have just given you is necessary for an understanding of the ways in which massive doses of LSD can affect the individual. Here we are dealing with an artificial and forced method of Here we are dealing with an artificial and forced method of, hopefully, bringing about physical, psychic, and spiritual illumination. Such enlightenment is supposed to lead to better health, self-knowledge, and provide an inner state of peace. Through such therapy, conscience is to be encountered and conquered once and for all. Conscience. Am I speaking clearly enough? Yes. It is believed that the self must shed its ego and die symbolically in order that the inner self can be free. A discussion involving LSD, conscience, the death and birth of the self, mental health, and spiritual illumination may not seem applicable to those of you who have not taken drugs. But all of you do hope for illumination, greater vitality and understanding in one way or another, and wonder what methods might help you achieve those ends. Much of this book will be devoted to various techniques that will help you change your own reality for the better. The next chapter will actually deal with a further discussion of some subjects that have been mentioned in this one. How aware can you be as an individual of your own greater reality? Can you use such knowledge beneficially to improve your daily life? If you are in serious difficulty, can LSD with therapy help you? Can a chemical open up the doorways to the soul? And then he ends the chapter, and we will continue. This is the new part of the book. This is beginning part 2 of the book. The first section of this book, part 1, was where you and the world meet. So we spent 9 chapters understanding how our soul intersects with the flesh through our body. Okay. Part 2 says your body is your own unique living sculpture. Your life as your most intimate work of art. And the nature of creativity as it applies to your personal experience. And then we begin chapter 10. Chapter 10 is titled The Nature of Spontaneous Illumination and the Nature of Enforced Illumination, the Soul in Chemical Clothes. And then we'll jump down to where it begins now. The young man, an assistant to a famous doctor, wrote and requested a session. He came here a few evenings ago and then attended Rupert's class the next night. I spoke to him on both occasions. He had been working with drugs in a therapeutic framework for some time. Before this, he had wandered through India, finally following a guru. He left the guru to follow the doctor. Like many young men all through the ages, he was on his individual journey looking for truth, overturning all stones in an effort to find those methods that would help him discover, in capitals, the way. Meditation had brought him some enlightenment, yet the guru in India told him that he must follow blindly in obedience. The doctor offered greater freedom in the hope that perhaps chemically the doors to truth, within his own soul at least, could be opened. So our searcher returned to this country and became part of a large organization. He saw the sick, unhappy, and neurotic brought to this new temple of truth in which chemicals take the place, say, of communion of bread. He felt that some good had been done, yet he also feared that some unnecessary and dangerous tampering might also be accomplished. He himself took drugs under controlled conditions several times, first small doses and then larger ones. He encountered some particularly frightening material. The doctor suggested that he face himself by taking another massive dose, and though he did not want to, he acquiesced. The experience was so shattering that he pleaded for a counter drug, knowing as he did so that this was against all the rules. The drug was refused him in any case. He said that he was glad that he was forced to see the thing through, yet grave doubts brought him here and will finally lead him into other areas away from such therapy. Many have come to me or written after bad trips. Young especially, always great searchers after truth and very tempted to look to the chemical LSD now as the latest method of finding it. I am not speaking of marijuana at all, which is a different thing altogether and is a natural product of the earth. I am talking about a chemical that is a result of your technological knowledge. When you are fairly happy and content in your daily life, you can be said to be in a state of grace. On those occasions when you feel at one with the universe, or come upon an exceptional experience in which you seem to go beyond yourself, you can be said to be in a state of illumination. And this has many degrees and levels. In any such state, your physical health benefits, generally speaking, though there may be some beliefs blocking in that direction. These natural states activate within your cells past memory having to do with joyful cellular response brought about by particular events in your lifetime, whether you are aware of them or not. This personal kind of cellular memory in turn triggers other layers within the cells to varying degrees. Again, each atom and molecule contains within it memory of its previous experiences. According to the state of illumination or grace, those mass memories may be activated that do not necessarily involve your personal experience, though your own involvement and the events of your life may appear within them in an entirely different framework than the one with which you are familiar. Any event of your life is written in the memory of the universe, for example, as you think of it. So, in a state of illumination, private cellular memory may be animated, and beyond this, a deeper level of knowing in which your own birth and death may or may not be explained. Naturally, left alone, you will at various times spontaneously experience such states of grace or illumination, though you may not use those terms. You will feel at peace with yourself and your world, or you will surpass yourself, suddenly feeling a part of events and phenomena usually considered not yourself. But to one extent or another, such experiences are natural and a part of your heritage. Your conscious mind, again, is a part of your inner self and ever-changing. In terms of species consciousness, it is a development of great significance. It draws strength from such sources of vitality and rejuvenation. They come naturally up to you, consciousness. Psychologists usually see people who are already in difficulty. The happy man has no need for such a visit. Few studies have been done to discover why the happy man is happy, yet his answers would be highly pertinent. In therapy, using massive doses of LSD, a condition of chemically enforced insanity takes place. By insanity, I mean a situation in which the conscious mind is forced into a state of powerlessness. There is a literal assault made not only upon the psyche, but upon the organizational framework that makes it possible for you to exist rationally in the world that you know. The ego, of course, cannot be annihilated in physical life. Kill one and another will and must emerge from the inner self, which is its source. Under such enforced conditions, you are literally facing egotistical consciousness with its own death in an encounter that need not occur. And while the physical body is fighting for its own life and vitality, you are bringing about a dilemma of great proportions. The landscape of the psyche is indeed revealed, bringing good data to the psychiatrist, but the experiences undergone by the patients, and all of this applies to massive doses, represent the enactment through terrible encounter of the species' birth into consciousness and its death as consciousness falls back annihilated, followed by its rebirth as the individual patient struggles to emerge again from dimensions not native under those conditions. The deepest biological and psychic structures are altered. I did not say they were damaged, though they may be according to the situation. Consciousness is assaulted at its roots. When periods of transcendence are felt under such conditions, they represent the psychic birth of a new personality from the sources of the old, and from the death, psychically, of the old. In some cases, the genetic messages have changed, in that they are different. This is a psychic slaying in a technological framework. Under LSD, you are highly suggestible. If you are told that the ego must die, then you will kill it. You will telepathically follow the ideas of your guide under even the best of conditions. The psychic rebirth may leave you with a completely new set of problems, rising on the bed of the old and as yet undecipherable. The new ego is quite aware of the conditions of its birth. It knows it was born out of the death of its predecessor, and for all its feelings of transcendent joy, natural enough at its birth, it fears that annihilation from which it sprang. The natural creature integrity is not the same. The physical world will never be trusted in quite the same way. The alliance with it is not as secure. The self that was born into the body and grew with it is gone. And another self has risen from that previous organization. Now, such self changes happen naturally as life progresses, and when the self modulates at any given time, it is different from what it was. When this occurs all by itself, it is an innate reflection of the psyche's creativity and happens with its own rhythm, connected to the seasons of the mind and blood and consciousness and cells in a way that you do not as yet understand. But the whole structure and its subsidiary relationships change together, and the conscious mind is able to assimilate what is happening. You grow and live through deaths that happen in you constantly, and travel through births within your lifetime that you do not comprehend. Such massive doses of LSD chemically activate all levels of cellular memory to such an extent that in certain terms they are no longer in charge of themselves, and the memories can then emerge unpredictably when the system is under stress. The fine biological and psychological allegiance is now weakened. It is only because you believe that the ego is such a stepchild of the self that you go to such great lengths to bring out inner knowledge. It is just because individuals are not aware of the resiliency of their own consciousness that they agree to such proceedings. So, patient and therapists share the belief that the conscious mind does not have easy access to the needed knowledge. They also share other beliefs, for example, that the inner self is a repository for repressed fears, terrors, and uncivilized savagery, that the inner self must be forced to get rid of such material before it's possible for it to express its power, energy, and strength in creative, positive terms, and that, therefore, the self must first encounter and deal with all those terrors of its past before it can be free of the fears of the present. Now, this is simply another system of belief in which patient and therapist operate. The spontaneity of such sessions do indeed seem to present psychiatrists and psychologists with a map of the psyche. Statistically, the individual experiences, while different, will of course follow a pattern, the pattern of beliefs consciously acknowledged and telepathically reacted to. Beneath this is a definite, though distorted, landscape of the psyche can be glimpsed in symbols. These symbols are consciousness's attempt to portray cellular memory. Psychic motion always excites the molecules. The latent, easily flowing, innate knowledge of the molecules build up the knowledge of the cells. They work smoothly together. Under enforced psychic assault of massive doses of LSD, the very comprehension of the molecules tries to split open. Now, this is not something you can physically perceive. Cellular integrity itself can be threatened. Rupert is quite right in thinking that this is far worse than any physical shock therapy. Worst of all, there is no need for it. All of this treatment rests upon the idea that the conscious mind is highly inadequate, that deep problems are unknown to it, that it is meant to be simply analytical, and is unable to handle very intuitive or psychic material. Your beliefs alone make this so. Assaults upon your consciousness in such a manner challenge the stability of your species and insult the integrity of your creaturehood. You may say that such chemicals are natural because they exist within the reality that you know, but the body is equipped to deal with ingredients that come from the earth. Great doses of such artificial drugs are not easily assimilated and bring about biological confusion. Within their native framework, some American Indians use peyote in their own way, but not as gluttons, stunning and annihilating their systems. They accept it as a natural ingredient belonging to their earthly structure. They do not try to blast themselves out of existence. They use it to increase the innate perceptions that they have. They become part of all that is, as they should, without dying as they are. They are able to assimilate their knowledge, to purposefully direct it into both their individual lives and their social structure. They also use it within their own system of beliefs, of course, in which their creaturehood is understood and taken for granted. The conscious mind is seen as a complement rather than a detriment to biological being. As mentioned earlier, there are, simply speaking, two schools of thought in current favor. One believes that the conscious mind and the intellect have all the answers, but to this school this means that the conscious mind is analytical above all and that it can find all the answers through reason alone. The other school believes that the answers are in feelings and emotion. Both are wrong. Intellect and feeling together make up your existence. But the fallacy is particularly in the belief that the aware mind must be analytical above all, as opposed to, for example, the understanding or assimilation of intuitive psychic knowledge. Neither school understands the flexibility and the possibilities that are inherent within the conscious mind, and mankind has barely begun to use its potentials. And we will stop there. Alright, I pushed all the way through basically to make it clear that massive uses of these chemicals, LSD, in order to work through some psychological problems is not recommended, which is extremely pertinent right now because there's a resurgence. This material was dictated in 1973, and here we are 40 years later, and it is coming back into favor in the medical community. Alright, so out of all of this, I want us to come down to a few words, one sentence, that puts this into nice and clear language for us to remember. While it's a lot of information, I do believe that we can do this. And that's always the challenge for our class here. After some thought, I've come up with a sentence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words that will give us the essence of some of the material that we just heard. And it boils down to this. I experience many moments assimilating intuition with reasoning. And that's going to be our statement. And as a side note, a personal side note, I had spent many years of my life grappling with this problem, trying to understand how to view life, and boiling down to questions of either or. And a lot of times I came up with that it was both, and again in this case I would say that that's where we're combination, synthesis of not only using our analytical reasoning mind to view the world, but of course elevating intuition, feelings, emotions, and psychic awareness even to a higher priority, so that we can spend more time focusing on these aspects in order to learn how to assimilate them properly, since we already know that basically the rational reasoning aspect of the world is developed to a large extent. Whether we are, quote, rational creatures and follow that most of the time, no, is sort of the short answer. However, part of the reason is that we are going to choose to experience a synthesis of both worlds of thinking. And again, the statement is, I experience many moments assimilating intuition with reasoning. And as we go forward, this will help us solve our problems, help others around us, and help mankind as a whole. Alright, we'll have a closing prayer. Dear Lord, thank you. Thank you for helping us reach this point in our lives where these words can make sense, that we can understand them, and that we can begin to apply them into our daily lives with an enhancement, a greater fulfillment, a greater richness, being part of our experience on a day-to-day basis, and allowing us to again enjoy the greater good aspects of life, of joy and spontaneity and creativity and value fulfillment.